Just want to thank everybody for coming today. I was given some money to give a special birthday wish to Brett Kimball. I won't mention who said that, but please don't shoot the messenger. Some folks say.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Erika Gebo. I am an associate professor of sociology at Suffolk University, and my colleagues will introduce themselves, and then maybe if we could just go around the room. I know we said hello to you, but if we could just hear your names again and where you're from, what your affiliation is, that'd be great.
So I'm Brenda Bond. I try to introduce myself to everybody. Work with Erika at Suffolk in the Institute for Public Service, which is the program that administers or sort of grants the Masters in Public Administration. So I teach in a number of courses and do research. Most of my research is around crime policy and implementation. So happy to be here, and thank you all for coming to meet us and talk with us.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Smith. I'm also from Suffolk University. I work with Erika and Brenda, and I'm here today to learn, just like everyone else, about this new project. So nice to meet you.
Thank you very much. What we'll do today is we're going to have, this is very informal, okay? We're going to tell you a little bit about where this grant came from, a little bit about Fall River's involvement, and we do have a PowerPoint, but it is not death by PowerPoint. This is a discussion in between. In fact, you have a copy of the PowerPoint if you want to take notes and look at that.
What we received the money for was to specifically work with a group of folks in Fall River who are working on the implementation, in some way, shape, or form, working on the implementation of the comprehensive gang model. So over the course of the next 18 months, we'll be here, we'll talk with you, figure out what's working, what's not working, create some kind of coaching and facilitation sort of model that works you through some of the gaps in the communication and the coordination, helps you tighten up some things, potentially identify some things that need to change either within your group practice or maybe it's within a particular organization. We will, over the course of the 18 months, I think it's the 3 years,
It's the 3 years.
we will ask you to complete surveys so that we can collect data like, tell me a little bit about your communication. Tell me about the communication between parole and the school department, or maybe that's not appropriate, but you know what I mean. I know that. But what is the nature of communication? And how do we track how that changes and improves over time? And then we'll just continue to collect information, work with you, feed that back to you so that you can identify what is it that we need to do here using this model in order to bolster what you're doing here in Fall River.
Right. And I would just add to that so we're going to give you the data back, and then we can help facilitate a conversation, and I would think too Mike would be integral to that, which is like, where do you want to go from here? And it's really taking the information, what do you have, and moving forward. There is a timeline too that kind of gives you an idea of how the grant's going to unfold. You have that in your packet, as well as what we call the one-pager. This is just like, here's the grant in a nutshell. So you can take time at some point to read over that, but you see the timeline there too. That's for you all. I think those are the 4 items in there.
And Erika had mentioned early about a workshop. So one of the big sort of activities that is like a one-time activity as part of the intervention is that we have actually in the grant we put in some funding to have 2 consultants who are the folks who've done this work in healthcare and in the airline industry. One of the researchers is from Brandeis University. The other person is a physician actually out of Rochester, New York. And they go around and they work with different groups. So whether it's community or healthcare or airline, or mostly they do a lot of work in healthcare, which I find to be a very similar kind of industry to sort of community work. They actually are going to work with us for 2 days in March. And so work with you, whoever it is, you all decide from this group, and to sort of sort through some of these things and to sort of launch, what I would say, launch the work that you will do with us over the course of the next 18 months. So it's sort of like an intensive relational coordination intervention workshop where you'll get into the much more sort of details of what this means, you know, when you talk about shared goals and shared knowledge and mutual respect, I mean, those are real easy to say, but they're sometimes hard to get to. And so they have done a significant amount of work in some really tough situations, and so I think they'll give us sort of a really good kick in terms of getting this conversation rolling here, and you'll all be sort of grounded. Then we'll leave that, and over the next 18 months, we will craft what that looks like for Fall River. You all figure out what is it that makes the most sense given what we've learned, given what we think, given what we want to do. And so, as Erika said, we will provide a process and sort of a structure, but how that comes to play here really is contingent upon your sort of needs and interests and the dynamics of Fall River. Anything else about that?
No, I think that's...
And you know, this just again sort of goes over. There's a 1.5 pager in your packet that really sort of summarizes this idea of the relational coordination model, and it starts to get into the different pieces of it. In some ways, it's a little bit theoretical, and in other ways, it's very practical. It's sort of getting people together that need each other in order to get to a certain place, and then how do you create that cohesion amongst the group so that everybody is working in the same direction.
And importantly, this particular technique, you know, we're talking about, the comprehensive gang model, and sort of you're thinking about that probably in terms of your funding for maybe 1 or 2 particular grants, but this goes across agency and across different sort of dimensions of whatever grants you certainly have or what your agency goals are. So this is just something that can be utilized as a whole. It's not just a one-time thing.
Yeah, right. I'm glad you said that, because it is, as I said, it's been tested in the airline industry, it's been tested in healthcare settings. There's a lot of work that's happening over actually in Denmark with municipalities. And so some really interesting cases about how different groups of people have come together to figure out how do we get better at this. And we need to talk to each other, we need to coordinate with each other. We think it's a really fantastic opportunity for us to test this in some really interesting cities that have been doing some really interesting things. So that's really what we hope to do, is test this and see if it makes a difference.
So what is it that we need from you? Again, one of the things that we said is that we don't want to come in and say, we need to do this, that, and the other thing. We want to work with you to meet your goals, understanding that you have unique local needs, and like we get that. In fact, Brenda and I weren't always academics. We worked in the field. So we get that in so many ways. And so we are trying to utilize sort of the data that you have. I'm more of the, sort of how this is broken up, I'm more of the data person. Brenda's going to be more of the working on the relational coordination piece, that intervention piece, and Stephanie's going to be doing a little bit of everything. She's going to be our like Kevin McHale, you know, she can do whatever she needs to type thing, you know, when need be. So, you know, what we need is active and honest participation in meetings, surveys, and data discussion. One of the things we'll ask for today is like, who is it should be at the table? And please be honest, like, if there's somebody that's missing, you know, who is it that you think that should be there? Who should be at the workshop? You know, when we do have those surveys, we'd ask you to be honest, and then when we're talking about the data and the feedback, you know, where do we need to go from here? And some of those conversations are going to be very difficult. We've been engaged in very difficult conversations, particularly where people were very honest, in a good way, in Springfield. And so we're kind of used to that. And, you know, we hope that happens here. We will need some data. We'll work with the data in what forum that's already there. That will be more of a conversation with the police department in some ways. And just your willingness to work collaboratively towards your shared goals. Do you have anything else to say? All right, so that's it in a nutshell. And we'd love to talk with you, do a couple things. I think at first, if we can just pass out, this is just take one of these sheets. We'd like to do, we don't want your name on it. We actually want a couple of things here, which are, number one, as you see it, what is your role in this idea around the comprehensive gang model? What do you see as your role? You know, if you kind of think about it in terms of those 5 strategies. So that's number one. What do you see as your role? Again, no names, just sort of what you see as your role. The second thing we'd like to know is, who is it that should be at the table here?
Who meaning an agency
yes.
or a group?
Right, or a community leader. leader, frankly.
Yeah,
That's
but
very
yeah.
important too. There
Right,
are,
but they may lead a particular community group or something, right?
no, there are some community leaders that are maybe associated with a church or what have you, so, yeah. So, okay, so again, what is your role in the Comprehensive Gang Model? Who is it that should be at the table? And then finally, who is it that should be at this workshop? Again, the workshop in March, which we'll get to in a minute in terms of location, there's room for 12 people from Fall River to be there. You know, who is it that should be there? And these are people that are going to get this information and then come back and talk with the broader community and the group about relational coordination and moving forward and that sort of thing. So it's think about it in those terms.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the parameter around the number of people
Yeah.
was not not under our control. It was really driven by the experience of these facilitators in terms of working with groups and communities, and they said, you know, we realize there are probably a lot more people who would be working on this, but in order to sort of effectively organize people, we really need a concrete set of people. So what we imagine is we work with you to figure out who are 12 potential representatives from this group who have to be, one, committed to going to this 1.5-day workshop, but also committed to coming back and helping to lead the conversation, right? So there's a lot of work and commitment associated with the people who will do that, as opposed to sort of just a passive participant. You need to be active, and in some ways it's a tough way to start, because we know we want to engage everybody, but we were sort of constrained by the facilitators in that way.
Right, and they're, these people, they work with private industry, and you should see, like private industry pays, I don't know how much, they're doing this as we're a charity case. I'm like, thank you. And
but I think they're really interested because
it's
a new context in which they could try some of these ideas out and see if these ideas really do translate across different kinds of issues, communities, organizations, and things like that. So if something is concerning you and you want to email us, or if you have questions or you have ideas, please, we want to be on the same page as you throughout this whole process. So thank you for taking the time.
I know.